Right now, in the crowd in front of Lincoln were several newspaper reporters who were eager to make headlines out of any mistake he might make. Of course, Lincoln could have refused the invitation to speak. With the war still going on and his son, Todd, gravely ill back in the White House, no one would have blamed Lincoln if he declined to attend. The truth was that he had wanted to be a part of the ceremony. He needed to see the landscape of Gettysburg where so many men had died. Suddenly, there was a murmuring from the crowd, and then scattered applause. Everett had finally arrived. A path was cleared through the crowd, and Everett made his way to the platform and his seat. As quickly as possible, the ceremony was begun. First, the chaplain of the House of Representatives offered a prayer, followed by music from the band. Then Everett rose to give his speech. Everett was more than a highly skilled speaker. He was a master showman as well. He had memorized every sentence of his 13,000-word speech, then rehearsed them over and over for dramatic effect. Even his hand movements were faultless. In a high, clear voice he began, "Standing beneath this serene sky, overlooking these broad fields now reposing from the labors of the waning year, the mighty Alleghanies dimly towering before us, the graves of our brethren beneath our feet, it is with hesitation that I raise my poor voice to break the eloquent silence of God and nature. But the duty to which you have called me must be performed. Grant me, I pray you, indulgence and your sympathy." With this 73-word warm-up, Everett launched into the main body of his speech. Lincoln had been given an advance copy of Everett's speech, so he was familiar with its contents. Even so, he must have been impressed by Everett's scholarly references to ancient Greece and its warrior gods, and the powerful way in which he spoke. Lincoln may have even compared his own little speech to the grand one Everett was delivering. It's also very probable that Lincoln's thoughts eventually strayed to the reason for the gathering at Gettysburg that day. Less than 5 months before, in July of 1863, the Union and Confederate armies had met there in a bloody 3-day battle. The hill where 20,000 stood listening to Everett had been the scene of the most brutal fighting of the war. When the cannon and gunfire had stopped, 6,000 Confederate and Union soldiers lay dead, and an incredible 42,000 were left wounded. As President and Commander-in-Chief, Lincoln was legally responsible for the actions of his army. Lincoln's involvement went much deeper, however. From the moment the first shots had been fired at Fort Sumter back in 1861, Lincoln had played an active part in the way the war was fought. He'd formulated policy, drawn up strategic plans, and he'd even directed the movement of troops. Lincoln was a daily visitor at the War Department, where he spent hours reading the telegraph dispatches pouring in from officers at the battlefields and fired instructions back on the spot. Lincoln believed firmly that the only way the United States would be restored was the complete defeat of the Confederate Army. To bring this about, he'd constantly urged his commanders to take on the rebel army in a head-to-head fight. Major battles had taken place: Shiloh, Bull Run, and Antietam, to name a few, but none had been decisive, mainly because the Union generals had failed to be aggressive. Then, in early June, a telegraph message had arrived at the War Department. The Confederate Army was on the move, it reported, and seemed likely to invade the North. On hearing of the possible invasion, Lincoln called a meeting with the commander of the Union forces, Major General Joseph Hooker, and his senior staff officers. During this conference, Lincoln said to them, "Gentlemen, in your next battle, put in all your men." Lincoln's order had been carried out in the rocky hills, ravines, and woods that now surrounded him. He had known all along that a major clash of the two armies would cost many lives, but the long rows of white grave markers were vivid proof of just how steep
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.